Hello, I'm Dom, and I am building an app for people who are building apps. And that's a bit confusing. So I'm going to have to explain myself and why, over the past couple of weeks, I've focused on the user journey. Now, I've gone out and I've talked to something close to 1,000 software developers and engineers over the past year, and many of whom want to build and monetize an app. But unfortunately, they find themselves making bad go to market and product decisions because they haven't talked to enough people. And that's kind of because they don't want to. Although there's a little bit more on that later. And my goal with this whole series and these videos is linked to my bigger mission, which is I want to help to build an independent tech culture and ecosystem. And that is from helping software developers and engineers find their route to building products and releasing them into the market and becoming founders. But explaining can only get me so far. So I'm going to have to teach by example. And that's how I've gotten to this point now. Now, what I want to talk about is jobs to be done. And this is a framework and an idea that is really important when it comes to developing products. Now, when we look at a product and the problem it solves and how it delivers value, there's sort of two things we need to consider here. Firstly is functional value. This is the very direct problem that it solves. But then we also have hidden delivery, and this is the indirect and sometimes unintentional work of the product. So you might well say a bicycle might well give you the functional value of getting from point A to point B, but then you might well do it because you feel like you've done an exercise for the day, right? That's the hidden delivery within it. Now, when I am going through and thinking about, well, how am I going to build this app and how am I going to deliver value and how am I going to work those things out? A real big question comes up, which is how do I meet the user where they are? Right? And this is really important because often what people do is to come up with an idea, build a product, and try to bring people to their product. And this really is the most difficult way of doing things. What you want to do is build your product and already have your distribution set up so you can take the product to them. Now, as you set up that distribution, you're going to learn really important things, and that's going to feed into the product decisions and the go-to-market decisions. And this is what I'm doing now. I have no app idea. I have nothing in development. I haven't got anything. And yet people are coming to me to talk about this product that I just don't have. And that's because I'm building the distribution. And as I talk about the problem more, people will start to gravitate towards it. So when you focus on meeting people where they are, this is what you end up with. First of all, marketing becomes a lot easier. And this is because the messaging you come out with aligns with the problem. And very often it comes with a very specific vocabulary or verbiage or whatever it is, the words that people use, coming out and just saying the best something for something isn't great. If those people fundamentally are people of luxury, you then want to use luxurious words, and it's the same thing with if people are gamers, right? You want to meet them at their level, and it helps give you the wording and the communication and the value proposition. Next is the brand, and this helps people feel that whoever's developing this product and the product itself is fit to what they're trying to accomplish and what they want to move forward with. So there are many occasions where a good product can fail because of a bad brand, or more specifically, a brand that people don't associate themselves with. And sometimes people will take a mediocre product simply because of who makes it and they quite like who they are. It may not be the best of the market, but it aligns with the brand that aligns with them. A great example of this is Apple iPods, right? AirPods. When they first released them, they weren't the first to market. Equally, they weren't the best in the market. Equally, they weren't the best value in the market. Yeah, they made more money on AirPods than any other of their SKUs. The reason being that it meets people where they are in terms of the brand, and the brand does a lot of the uplift. So you want to be able to capture that in your brand. We are the exact right people to solve this very specific for you as a very particular type of person. And lastly is the product. And this is something I find a big question comes up for me with my product experience, where developers will come up to me and say, hey, what features do I build first? And I was like, well, it depends, right? And this is the point, that when you sort of build out the distribution and you figure out where your users are and you meet them where they are, then you're able to prioritize the features that are going to deliver a lot of value very quickly, right? You can just get out the gate and deliver some value and people are going to use it. Now, what I have done so far to get to this point is I've gone out and talked to a lot of people, and that has mostly been at networking events. But what I've started to also do is webinars and workshops, mostly, where it's a case of, oh, okay, I can say, right, how do we talk to people? How do we get user insights? How do we make sure we build up distribution? And what I'm doing is gauging what's coming back to me. I want to know what questions get asked from the audience to me when it comes to doing user interviews or how to find people to talk to, etc. And I've also done a lot of outreach. So I've gone on LinkedIn and I've found a bunch of software developers and engineers. That is my cohort. That is my ideal customer profile. And I've just started pinging them messages, right? And nothing like straight out the gate, nothing cold, just saying, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? What are you working on? Etc. etc. If they get to the point where they're saying, oh, I want to build this thing, then it allows me to say, hey, by the way, I could help you in this area when it comes to figuring out the marketing, the branding, the product and everything around it. That comes from a place of meeting people where they are. And from this place, this is what I've learned. Something that's come back quite a lot is, what do I do day to day, week to week? All right. And an analogy somebody used for me was, I can go to the gym and pick up weights every day and I get stronger. I can go to the gym and I can run every day and I get faster, right? Or I can run for a longer distance. There is always some progression, but when it comes to the marketing and it comes to the brand, you can do more of those things and more activities, but it doesn't really result in more of that thing. And this is where they get stuck. And what they don't understand is that if I do these things today, will it actually result in some positive outcome at the end of it? Because to a certain extent, there's a little bit of faith throughout the whole process. And that's where people get stuck. So understanding what to do day to day, week to week, and why you want to do those things is what's important. So where this has led me is to this hypothesis. And this is a really good approach to take if you are looking to build and monetize an app, which is to boil everything down, not in terms of everything you do, rather put it into a form of a hypothesis. If I build a structured progressive program to build a product and go-to-market strategy, then people looking to become founders will buy it to know what to do and when. Right? And when I say structured progressive program, I can put it into the camp of progressive achievement apps. Right? It's not a thing of you turn up, you get a bit of value, thanks very much, see you later. It's a case of there is a continuing of it. And things that are similar like this are Duolingo, Couch to 5K, and Boot.dev. But there's a whole bunch of other ones as well, which just has this progressive achievement. So that's got to be a sense of it from the get-go. So how can this be useful for you? And when you go out and you talk to people, or you try and do some desktop research, or whatever it is, you need to define both the direct value and the indirect value, right? This is where we start to get to the crux of the jobs to be done. Now, the example I've given here is Canva. Right, Canva directly gives teams the designs that they need, right? They can sit down and do the design work. But indirectly, what I hear a lot from marketing teams, by the way, it gives them a lot of ownership over the brand, right? And they don't have to go off and learn how to use Figma or learn how to be a designer, right? They can just have that ownership, and that's direct value and indirect value. Now, there are many direct values and many indirect values, so you've got to work out what's important, what's going to be at the top of the list, because that's what you're going to lead with in your marketing. That's what I mean by go meet people where they are, right? If that's a priority for them, you need to meet them with the same priority. It can't just be I have 5 features, they're equally as important, and then I pick the one that's most important to them. You lead the entire initiative with that priority. And I got this image, and I think it really exemplifies what it is. What a customer buys, in terms of functional, right, and in terms of something that's tangible is, you've got the skateboard, you've got the bearings, the wheels, all the screws and all the rest of it. And this really goes to show, you can, each one of these elements, you can absolutely look at it from a point of view of this is what comprises a good product. If you are an enthusiast, you might turn around and say the wheels are really important, and so much about what wheels go well on what terrain and whatever else. But what you really want at the other end of it is I feel like a skateboarder, right? And that's different, and that's indirect. But without the second bit, you can't deliver the first bit. And this is often I see with startups that I've worked with as a startup consultant. This is something I've seen a lot of, where people really focus on the material, tangible, very close touch point, functional value that it delivers. But what they don't think about is how the user is going to feel at the end of the journey. And this is why I talk about user journeys. You need to be sure that when people progress through your product and the value that you deliver, that the end point, the end of the journey, has some relation to who they are as people and what their goals and needs and desires are in order to get there. So, what can you do today, over the weekend, over the week, that can help you understand this? First of all, list direct and indirect value from your product. That's it. Get a piece of paper, get a pen, open up the Notes app, open up Obsidian, open up Notion, I don't care, right? Just list them. Just sit down and list them. And what you can also do as a bit of practice is find your favorite products and list down what are the direct and indirect value, right? So I've got this microphone, right? The direct value is that I can deliver my voice with a certain level of clarity. But the indirect value is also that I can feel like a creator. Okay, I am producing something that I wouldn't get from another microphone. The other thing you can do is dig deeper. Just do not always assume you don't have all the answers yet. There's another level to come down to, right, and dig into. And at the top of this, I sort of said, people are making bad go-to-market and product decisions because they don't want to talk to people. And it kind of is that, but it's also at the same time not knowing what to do on a day-to-day basis, right, on a regular basis, as a routine, right? The two things are intrinsically linked. And that was something I discovered just from doing outreach and doing the webinars. But I didn't learn that by going out and talking to them, simply because the context of the conversation, it never came up. So just assume you don't know everything, so you've got to dig deeper. And then map out your journey with blocks. So you can use Post-it notes and a pen, you can use Miro, you can use FigJam, you can use whatever you want. But you want to map that journey out. So the beginning of the journey, what does destination A look like? What does the end of the journey, destination B, look like? And what are all the blocks in between that gets them to that journey? Again, for both direct and indirect value, because you might find your product doesn't do the whole journey. It might only do a slice of the journey. And that whole element of picking your battles will help you make better strategic decisions, because you might be primed to fix this one little bit and have everything you need, but everything around it, unfortunately, you don't have the means to do it just yet. There's no point trying to acquire those means if you have no idea of how to. You're going to end up chasing yourself around and lose momentum, and you won't get anywhere. So map out the journey so you understand the problem on a greater level. And that is me for this vlog of me building this app. Thank you for watching. You can find me on TikTok and Substack and Blue Sky and all the other places at JuffDom. And thank you for watching. I'd appreciate a like and subscribe if you want to follow along with the journey, and pop any questions about product development in the comments. Okay, see you in the next one. Bye-bye.